Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I have learned as I have grown into the person that I am today. And it is currently 12:40 p.m. I have been up since like 8 o'clock this morning, 7:30. Well, between like 7:30 and 8 o'clock, my alarm started going off and I got up. I went to bed early last night. So, let's do some meditations. Are you ready? I brought several books with me today. The Melody Beatty books, and the Linda Picone book, and just some other ones. So let's read actually first from A Time to Be Free, Daily Meditations for Enhancing Self-Esteem. I haven't looked at any of these books today, so I don't know what any of these meditations are going to be about. Let me get a sip of my coffee. It's a little lukewarm at this point. My coffee from McDonald's, my McCafe. Let me get a sip of that before I start. Today is November 17th. Let's see what this meditation says to us. True love, the love to which we all aspire, is essentially spiritual in nature. Its flow is more outward than inward, yet true love is also self-replenishing. It is when we are loving toward another that love grows within ourselves. We have developed faith, trust, acceptance, honesty, and generosity during our spiritual quest. These qualities have become the expressions of our love today. For example, when we demonstrate faith by giving a partner or spouse our unqualified support rather than trying to manage their every move, we are expressing love. When we accept someone exactly as he or she is, including faults, weaknesses, and idiosyncrasies, we are being loving. When we are generous of heart, thinking of others' happiness before our own, we are putting love into action. We are gradually discovering what love is all about. In the spirit of St. Francis of Assisi's inspiring prayer, we are finding that it is far better to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to give than to receive, and to love than to be loved. Thought for today: when I express my love with actions, that is when I feel the most loving. Wow, this is a super powerful meditation for me, and a really good reminder. And it was interesting at the beginning of the meditation. It said, true love, the love to which we all aspire, is essentially spiritual in nature. And the reason why that line stood out for me, other than it just being the first line of the whole meditation, is, you know, at my meeting last night, so we separated into small groups, and the group that I was in, we had all in there experienced a lot of loss in the last week. And so we were talking about grief, and we were talking about loss, and how we deal with those things. And you know, I was talking a lot about how when our dog Pee-Pee passed away almost 2 years ago, and that was kind of the beginning for me of me feeling like I had a lot of loss in my life. And I was talking about how it's interesting because I believe that with each loss that you experience, you know, and I think it's important in talking about grieving. And no, this whole video is not going to be about grieving. It's going to be about love, but which I think is synonymous in some ways. But you know, when I think we experience a loss, it reminds us of previous losses. You know, so when you're going through the loss of like maybe a move, it reminds you of previous moves, which I think it's important to talk about how moves, relationships, careers, friends, all of that we can experience grieving with that without having to have somebody pass away. But have you ever been to like a funeral before, and you go and you find yourself being overly emotional at the funeral, but maybe you didn't really know that person that well, or maybe before you got there, you didn't feel super emotional, and then you get there and you're like, what is going on with me, right? And like you're the one that's sobbing the most. I think sometimes, like for me, I find myself grieving later. Like, you know, when my aunt passed away, I really truly felt the grief of having lost my mom, you know, and vice versa. And so I think that further loss helps us with previous loss. So I was talking last night in our meeting in my home group meeting, about having lost Pee-Pee 2 years ago. And then I think that what's going on right now with my fear of our dog Tucker's illness is that it's bringing up everything that I went through 2 years ago. Like, I feel like I'm reliving it all over again. I mean, Tucker's on the exact same medications as Pee-Pee and on this kind of stuff, you know, and it's just like, I remember like one of the hardest moments for me was after Pee-Pee had passed away. Alex and I were standing in the kitchen, and we were just kind of holding each other like right over there, and where we kept Pee-Pee's medicine, and I just started bawling, and I was like, I can't throw his medicine away, but why keep it? And Alex was like, we need to throw the medicine away. And one of the hardest things for me was throwing Pee-Pee's medicine away, because it was this routine that we had gotten into, you know, and that medicine was for me, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but anyway, that medicine, how it went in this direction, but that medicine for me was, I don't know, like a lifeline to hope to some degree. So anyway, I was talking about Pee-Pee and how like 2 years ago, this kind of, it started bringing up a lot of loss for me with my mom and my aunt and my uncle and just relationships in my life and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like I've kind of been like teetering on that fence of loss for a while. And you know, there's a lot of loss that I've experienced in the last 2 years. And then this week, it like brought it all up for me again. Well, the reason I'm talking about that in reference to this meditation and that line is that I remember one night that we were driving around, Tanya and I, my best friend, and I was talking about how I just was like, you know, in the past, like I allowed myself to grieve. I allowed myself to just like feel the moment. And one of the greatest things that one of my friends said last night was allowing yourself to embrace grief, which I think is sometimes hard because we're so resistant to it, you know? But I did. I really allowed myself to embrace grief through the years. And, but with Pee-Pee, like, it just was like, there was something I couldn't let go of. I don't know what it was, you know? And Tanya said to me, she goes, I really think that little guy was your soulmate. She's like, you know, I think we think of soulmates as being like love partners and romantic partners. She's like, but I really think that that little guy was your soulmate, you know? And it was so weird because I started looking at our relationships with animals and pets in a completely different way, you know? And I definitely believe that Pee-Pee was my soulmate. But, you know, what's interesting about that is, in reading this meditation, it's got me thinking about the way that we treat pets, you know? And when it talks in here about, like, you know, the way that you are with your dog or your cat or your bird or fish or whatever, you know? And going to the St. Francis prayer where it talks about, you know, we are finding that it is far better to comfort than to be comforted. I mean, how often are we comforting our pets versus them comforting us? I mean, I think they do that, but I think it's us comforting them, you know, to understand them. Instead of them understanding us, you know, and to love them rather than us being loved. I think animals give us unconditional love, understanding and compassion and comfort, but I think it's us really doing it that way, right? And so then you think about these relationships that we have with pets when you come through the door and they're wagging their tails and they're so excited to see you and on and on and on, right? And I think that for us, most of us, that have relationships, you know, with dogs or cats or whatever your pet is, you know, it's like we have these unconditional relationships with them. And I wonder what it would be like if we treated people a little bit more like that. You know, if we treated people on the same level that we treat pets in our lives, if we treated them as well. And I know people are like, what is he talking about? But think about it. Like, in all honesty, I treat my dogs better than I treat most of the people in my life. True story, I really do, you know? And I'm not gonna say that my dogs don't wear me out when I have to take them out 15 times a day or whatever, or that I love to feed them and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, we do that because we love them, you know? And I don't see it as this, like, God, I don't want to feed the dog. I don't feel like that. I feel like I have dogs. I chose to have dogs, and that's my responsibility to them. You take them to the vet, you feed them, you walk them, you take them outside, you know, all that kind of stuff. And wow, what do we get in return for that? You know, so much. Maybe if we treated people the same, or maybe even just a little bit better than we treat our pets sometimes, because I think that I take a lot of the people in my life for granted. I'm sure many of us do. You know, and I really don't with my dogs. I really don't take them for granted. I can honestly say that, you know, that they get more attention from me than most people in my life. So anyway, I like this idea, but I also like the idea that I truly do believe, you know, that when I am being loving towards somebody, when I am doing something like anything superficial from like buying a gift, because I get very excited buying gifts. I bought this pie cake in for Thanksgiving. Do you guys know what this thing is? It's ridiculously expensive pie cake. Okay, it's called the pie cake in. Oprah had it on her list years ago of like best desserts or whatever, and it's out of Chicago, and they send it to your house. But it's like this 7-layer pie cake, and it's got pumpkin pie, or pecan pie, and pumpkin pie, and cake, and all this stuff. I'm so excited about it. I called my cousin Caroline. I was excited telling Alex about it. I'm excited about everybody experiencing this. You know, and I love to buy gifts for people. I love to find like little just unique gifts. I think I get that from my mom. But those are superficial things, you know. And then I think it's other things. Just calling somebody up and saying, how are you doing today? I was thinking of you. you know, or just, I don't know, being there for somebody, or just, you know, letting somebody know that, you know, you were thinking of them, or, you know, taking a loaf of bread or some cookies over to your neighbor just because you haven't seen them in a while, you know? It's just like all of those things. It's like, I think those are expressions of love. And I think in doing things for other people, we are ourselves fulfilled. You know, my best friend is somebody that I told the story of her friend. So one of their favorite, or one of their best friend couples, the husband had, he had brain issues and he passed away. And I think he had brain, I don't know how to say it, but I think he had like a tumor or a brain disease or something like that. And so, but anyway, towards the end, there was one day, I was complaining about all kinds of craziness in my life, and to Tanya on the phone, and she was like, I called her like several times that day. So we went and got a Fountain Coke that night. And I said, and I'm like, oh my God, can you believe this? And can you believe that? And I was going off and I was ranting and raving. And I said, well, what did you do today? And she said, oh, I went over to so-and-so and so-and-so's house and I cleaned the house. And I rented some movies from them for the Redbox so they could sit there and watch some movies. And I made them dinner so that they didn't have to worry about anything. And I was like, here I am complaining about my life that day. And Tanya's over being of service to others, you know? And I said to her that day, I'll never forget this. I said, how do you get there? Like, how do you get to become that person? And she said, that's what I was taught to do in recovery, you know, is be of service to others. And I've really worked on that the last couple of years. There was a meditation I read, gosh, it's probably been like 3 years ago now in here, that said, you know, when somebody passes away or somebody's sick or whatever, don't go to that person and say, what do you need me to do? Just do things for that person. If their lawn looks like it hasn't been mowed, mow their lawn, you know? We had a friend of ours that she came to Tanya and she was like, with the same couple, she was like, do they need something from me? And Tanya's like, I think it was after he had passed away, like just like the day after. And Tanya said to this woman, she goes, yeah, they really need their yard mowed. And the next day, Tanya like drove over there and the yard was already mowed. You know, that's how we're of service to others, you know, and I'm constantly trying to work at being better at that. Because the reality is that when I am loving towards others, when I am of service to others, when I am full of love towards mankind and other people, I feel fuller myself. I feel better about myself, and I feel better about interacting with people out there. And that's the real trick. There's no real magic to happiness and love. It's just, you know, if you think of yourself being full of love, you know, like literally imagining just love coming out of you like golden light, well then, that's what others are going to see as well. And that's how you're going to feel on a daily basis. So anyway, wonderful meditation. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.